Hey guys, how's it going? Is it coming home? Miles? Is it coming home?
I actually think it might be.
Wow, it's been an incredible round of quarterfinals. England have finally got something to be excited about. We'll be looking at all the games, but more importantly, that England win on penalties against Switzerland. It was a bit of a difference to the games we've seen before, and the system was changed up quite a bit, wasn't it, Miles? Did you feel optimistic watching that change from the start? Because there were quite a few changes, and it made I felt, an instant impact. How about you?
It was interesting because it wasn't the changes we thought it was going to be. The formation was, but I think most of us anticipated that Saka was going to be on that left-hand side and Trippier was going to slot back onto the right. And instead, no, they kept Trippier on the left, which I thought was suspect. And actually, Saka had the freedom of the right-hand side and he was outstanding in it again. It's funny. It's like England's players individually are trying to grow into the tournament, and some of them are still feeling a bit like they're not doing what we needed them to. But there are a couple of them there that are carrying us through, and like Saka in particular, I'm sure we'll talk about it more. Man of the match performance. That's what you need at this sort of level. Those moments where someone of world class quality, it feels like, will get you to a semi final. So the system changes were one thing, but it seemed like a mentality change more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean the system changes allowed that bit of extra balance that I feel like we've all been crying out for in the previous games. And although it was still a bit off balance with the left hand side, it was nice to see Luke Shaw come back for a start. But what made the performance overall for England just better generally? The system made a difference, but what in particular clicked, do you think?
To be honest, I'm not sure a lot did click. And it's funny, I don't think we should get too carried away with this performance. I think we looked stable again. I think defensively we looked really strong, and that's good. We didn't look like we were going to give away lots of opportunities. But going forward, there's still a lot lacking. I think instead it was the individual brilliance that kind of gave us moments, particularly from Saka. I think they still need to work out a balance, because it felt like when we were on the ball, Bellingham and Foden really struggled to get into the game at times. They did really good. Their pressing was a lot stronger together as a unit because they were both central. But on the ball, we still struggled to activate them. Harry Kane really seemed to struggle to get up to the pace of the game, as I'm sure we'll talk about. And it wasn't until the changes came in where we even had a left-hand side. It was like they all kind of flooded that area once we brought Shaw, brought Eze, brought Palmer on. That did change the dynamic, although that was a system that I would question, because we didn't really have a formation at that point. Southgate kind of just put players on the pitch and hoped one of them would do something, and one of them did, and it was Saka. And it seems like it was fitting for it to have been him, because he's probably been England's best player over the last 2-3 years, I would say. So yeah, I'm not sure I saw a lot click, but I'm quite confident that some individuals are good enough for us, and that gives me hope in the tournament.
I think you're right. I think there were still moments of frustration with England's build-up play, definitely. And I think you want to see, at the very least, impetus change. And I think that's what we saw from England. The impetus, the mentality, the approach was a lot more forward-thinking, and that was just really refreshing. And I think the frustrations I did find, and I think we found this until Switzerland scored the opening goal as well, quite late in the second half. Well, there was still no shots on target from either team up to that point. It was just the disconnect between midfield and Kane. And I think that was partly down to Harry Kane's just lack of energy for a start. He just looked tired, didn't he? But also, it didn't look like he was making any movement up front, which was really frustrating for Bellingham, for Foden. And it was disjointed, I think, until we did go behind and made those substitutions. Now, I think the question I was asking myself is, if we made those subs before that Switzerland goal, would they have even scored in the first place? And I don't think they would have done. I think it would have changed the attacking dynamic even more, even though it was a little bit chaotic at times, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly with Kane, it seemed like he was flagging from the first minute. By the 60th, he absolutely should have come off, and it took a potential injury for him to even make that change in the first place. I felt for the rest of the attacking lineup, particularly Saka, because it felt like so many times he got down the wing, beat his man, got to the byline, and then looked to the box, and there's no one there. Kane's always going deep looking for the ball and then not making kind of effective runs into the box. I mean, you look at Switzerland's goal, it comes from a ball across the box where someone gambles and makes that run to the back post. And that's enough. Whereas every time we got the ball into that sort of dangerous position, Kane stood on the edge of the 18-yard box. And that to me is a sign of someone whose instinct isn't quite there at the moment and looks like he hasn't got the pace to kind of threaten a defence with a run. So he's trying to drop deeper into available space instead of challenging in the more threatening areas. Now, we know he had that back injury. We know that he missed a lot of the end of the season with Bayern and kind of came back to this tournament not really knowing what his fitness levels were like. But it's up to Southgate to manage that. And I don't think he's done that so far. Like, Tony has looked threatening every time he's come on. You've got Watkins as an option who will make those runs and play with the wide players. Absolutely would have been more effective in this game once again. And again, I'm really confident that Kane starts the semi-final and probably plays all 90 minutes. So, yeah, I think that needs addressing. Absolutely. I think it's a shame because he's undoubtedly one of England's best ever number 9s and is currently still, when fit, probably England's best footballer. But right now he's not fit, and we need to, instead of just shoehorn him into the side, actually look at what is going to be best for us in this tournament. And it probably, I can't believe I'm saying this, probably isn't Harry Kane.
No, I agree. I think it's a brave call to make to drop the captain for a start and record goal scorer. And I don't think Gareth Southgate has been well known in his time at England as England coach for making brave calls like that. And again, I don't think he will make that call this time around. I think it's a semi-final of a major tournament, and I think he tends to call upon his most trusted lieutenants, and Kane's the most trusted. So I think he'll still get that start, which worries me a little bit because you can see some of the attacking ideas coming together when he's not the focal point. Because like Watkins, you can just picture what kind of runs he's going to make. We've seen him do it all season with Aston Villa. And when he brought players like Eze on, for example, who were looking for him, Saka marauding down the right, they need that kind of player to see what they're going to do and anticipate those passes. And at the minute, Kane's not that person. So it is a shame. I do think he'll start the semi, but I think the bravest call Gareth Southgate can make in that respect is when to take him off. And at the minute, I still don't think he's quite getting that right, is he? That timing of substitutions.
No. And also, you got to think as well, if we're talking about the captain and what it means to kind of drop the captain, I think really, as a leader, he knows he's not fit. It's up to him to take it into his own hands, I think, at one point and make himself unavailable. Because Southgate will pick him. If he's telling Southgate, I'm fit enough to play, Southgate's going to pick him. He's clearly not, though, and he must know that. He must know that this isn't the right time for him. If the best thing he could do as England's captain right now is come out on Monday and say, I'm unavailable for the semi, I'm gutted, but I'm not fit for it. And I honestly think we'd be a better side for it. And that's not to say, if Kane was fully fit, I'm taking him above Watkins and Tony all day for this England side. But in the current state of things, I think we are looking like such a blunt force going forward because we are solely relying on Saka to produce that moment of magic that he did in this game. Otherwise, I don't, or Bellingham even in the last game, we're getting by individual moments of brilliance, and that is excellent, but isn't necessarily consistent enough to get you through a tournament because you only need one game where they don't do that, and then all of a sudden you're done. Whereas if you can improve the whole system, then you are more likely to find success.
This system definitely improved England's play going forward. And I think the performance of Saka is a real testament to that because he thrived on it in some ways, didn't he? And let's talk about him for a moment, his goal and just his contribution as an England player now, especially since the last Euros final, where he was crestfallen, wasn't he? We all felt for him. But he's come back with a penalty shootout goal in the World Cup, a penalty shootout goal in this Euros, and consistently being one of Arsenal's top players as well. I think it's probably fair to say this the first name on the team sheet now for England, isn't he? What an absolute world-class player we've got on our hands there.
Yeah, I think he has to be, particularly when you consider that he started this game completely out of position and had said openly it wasn't really something he wanted to play, but he will do it for the team, and he made it work. And honestly, it did feel like the goal came from, instead of following any tactical instruction, just him knowing, look, I do this every week for Arsenal. I'm just going to do it here. You can't tell me that there isn't something stopping him from doing that in the rest of the games. He's got that in his locker, and I've not even really seen him try it so far this tournament. That tells me that's a coaching decision rather than the player. And I think when the substitutions came in, if you think about those substitutions, he took off Konsa, Trippier and Mainu for Shaw, Palmer and Eze. Now you tell me what formation he's playing there, because he's taken off 2 defenders and a midfielder for 2 wingers and a fullback.
But do you know what? I don't know about you. I really enjoyed it, mate. I thought it was great.
Oh yeah, it was great, but that's not how. it's not sustainable. That's not a managerial decision, is it? That's just, I'm going to whack as many players on a pitch that could do something as possible and hope one of them does something. And it's funny that it was only at that point that Saka felt the freedom to cut inside and shoot on his left foot, so that we know he is notoriously good at. And I'm really glad that he had that moment, because, yeah, he's such a likable young man. He's an example for so many kids out there trying to play football at any sort of level. Like, he's an absolute role model, comes across like a great personality and a wonderfully talented footballer that England need to just absolutely treasure and appreciate, rather than kind of think about whether, should we be making room for Foden and Bellingham and not playing him, or should we be getting Cole Palmer on instead of Saka? Don't insult him. Honestly, that is ludicrous. Any talk of Cole Palmer starting ahead of Saka can only possibly be coming from Chelsea or maybe Spurs fans, and even then they're deluded. Like, Saka is phenomenal.
Well, we talked a lot about England offensively, and we've struggled to create chances and to score goals this tournament, as we know. We felt like we created a lot of chances, but obviously still lacked that cutting edge, really, to an extent. But it was better, a lot better. But defensively, with the back three and Maynard and Rice in that sort of double pivot in front of them, but notably Ezri Konsa in that back three as well. It looked comfortable, didn't it? I mean, there were moments where Switzerland really pressed us and really kind of tested our defence, but I felt like on the whole, we kept them at bay quite nicely. And Maynard and Rice were world class together. I thought they were brilliant.
Yeah, they have been. Well, Rice has been all tournament, and since Maynard's introduction, he's been fantastic. Yeah, and that looks like a really balanced midfield. It was one that a lot of people were calling for before the tournament started, and the fact that he got his call up Maynard after an amazing debut season, he's proved his worth again at this level. And I think those two were fantastic. And the defence was really strong. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because Mark Gahey, until this game, had probably been England's best player. And then Konsa's come in and fulfilled the exact same role. And he probably won't play the next game now. He probably won't play again in the tournament. Gahey will come back in. And we're talking about, I think, one of the best, like, debut in a tournament performances I've seen for England. I thought he marshalled that defence really well. And Bolo barely got anything from him all game. Like, his stats are crazy. So it was a 98% pass accuracy. Out of 47 passes, he completed 46. He made 7 clearances, 2 blocks, 2 headed clearances, 11 total defensive actions, 1 ball recovery, and 100% of his ground duels he won. Like, he was just imperious. Like, there was no getting past him. And even moments where it looked like Mbola might turn, his recovery is so good that he managed to do the whole thing. Like, he didn't look out of place, did he, at this sort of level? And considering this is his first major tournament appearance, that's excellent from him, I thought. He was outstanding.
Yeah, well, options at centre-back, and I think at the start of the tournament we were kind of worrying about that position. But I think Gahey's performance, and obviously Konsa as well now, makes you realise that the stand-ins and the starters, whoever they may be, are actually going to be quite comfortable as long as the system's right. And as long as that midfield in front of them does the job they're meant to do. And I think that was key to this game, because Rice and Maynard were great working together in tandem, one going forward, one covering, and that kind of to and fro was really effective. The 3 at the back and 2 sort of fullbacks, that was interesting as well. Trippier, like you say, started on the left and Saka on the right, and I thought it would be the opposite way around for some reason. Felt better balanced that way. Do you think that will persist? Do you think we can play 3 at the back with the fullbacks bombing forward against the Dutch?
So I think so, yeah. And I think Shaw showed that he probably will be fit enough to start the next game as well, because he looked really good. I thought Shaw looked great when he came on. It was a weird system, because by that point we were playing 3 at the back, but 2 of them were fullbacks. It was kind of Shaw on the left, Stones in the middle, and then Walker on the right. So I'm not sure that that's very sustainable, but I think he probably will stick with that system. And I feel for Kieran Trippier, but he's not having a good tournament. And I thought he looked really ineffective on that left-hand side, because how many times did we see the ball go out wide to him, and you know what he's going to do? He's going to cut in and try and cross on his right foot. And it felt like by the time he'd done that, he'd been closed down every time. I feel like every cross he made hit the first defender. So that's not a sustainable model. I wonder if they will stick with it. It's difficult to say, because it kind of matched Switzerland's system in this game and wouldn't necessarily match the Dutch system. And when you think that Denzel Dumfries in particular on that right-hand side gets so far forward as a fullback, and you've also got Xavi Simons that will come out and cut out into that right, or potentially Bergwijn or someone else to kind of add. You need to really double up on that left-hand side and actually be defensively sound. And if you've got a fullback bombing forward, that could be difficult. But if you've got a centre-back covering him, that could be really strong too. It might be a reason to actually keep Konsa in there because he fulfilled that role really well. And I wonder if actually we could see Trippier drop out for sure, and we could potentially even see Kyle Walker drop out because he's not necessarily had a very good tournament either. It's probably the weakest we've seen him in an England shirt. His recovery pace is so vital, particularly if you're going to play a right wing back. But would we be better off with a back three of Stones, Gahey, and Konsa in that next game? I don't know. What do you reckon? Who would you play in that defensive line?
I agree. I think that the three you've just said then would be a better, more in form, first of all, and just better defensively than what we've seen. And that's important. I don't think we can afford to make any defensive lapses because I think the Dutch forward line is the first, I think, we faced that could punish us for it. Switzerland were very good, but Mbolo didn't have a great game by any means. He was marshalled pretty well, but the Dutch are in form. Gakpo especially, he's flying at the minute. So, yeah, let's keep it as tight as we can. I even thought about the idea of starting Stones in defensive midfield alongside Rice. So if we do get caught out and vulnerable, he can just step back into defence quite comfortably. And he's done that for Man City before.
Yeah, I don't think Southgate will want to change that midfield now because it feels like we've finally got a bit of a winning formula, and he's tried so many different things alongside Rice that this is the one, isn't it? It's funny because no disrespect to any of the teams we've played so far, but the Dutch are the first team we will play that have got individual brilliance. Switzerland are really well set up as a team and as a unit. And a lot of the sides we've faced prior to this defensively set up like a unit. But we've not really had anyone really test us. And you look at some of the quality in the individual players that the Netherlands have. Like Xavi Simons will undoubtedly test some of our players. Gakpo is really capable in these moments of just producing something. We've not seen that yet. And we've talked about how strong our defence has been so far, but this will be the first time they're tested by truly world-class, if not world-class, then at least top-level ability. That's a big one. Because remember, going into this tournament, the thing that we were all worried about more than anything was who are our centre-backs going to actually be. Maguire was in terrible form and then dropped out through injury, and we were worried about who would replace him. All the talk was about Branthwaite, he didn't go, and now actually it's been probably the most stable part of England's team so far this tournament.
Yeah.
I just wonder how they'll face up with this Dutch attacking line because they leave space in behind Holland. They're there to be got at, but we're not doing very well at getting at teams so far. And we are looking stable defensively, but this team will go at you, unlike anyone we've faced so far. So it's going to be an interesting test.
It is. The Dutch are going to be a big test. I think probably a bigger test than who we may face in the final in some ways, just because of how unpredictable they are. The Dutch have grown into the tournament, whereas with Spain, we've seen them from kick-off of match day one performing the same way with the same attacking methods, and the Dutch seem a little bit more chaotic and unpredictable, which might play to England's strengths. You never know, because we've been pretty chaotic and unpredictable at times as well, haven't we, going forward? So we'll see. But I didn't ever assume from the first couple of games that England would ever get this far playing the way they've played. So to be in the semi-final, it feels like, as I said in the intro, you can finally start to get excited a bit now, don't you think?
I do, yeah. And obviously, as with a lot of the tournaments we've been in recently, the draw has helped us grow into the tournament. We didn't meet someone big early while we were at a more vulnerable state, and we are getting better. It's not great still. I don't look at this game and think, England look like the best side in the tournament, but we found a way to win again, and the confidence will continue to build. Like, you probably still say that France are one of the favourites for it out of the four. It's probably between them and Spain. Whoever wins that will probably be the favourite. They've not really looked great, have they? But they've got through however they needed to. So it's comparable, I think. I don't think this England side should be written off now. And the game against Holland could be the perfect tie because they're not one of the best sides in the tournament by any stretch, but they are a very good side. So it feels like it will be the right sort of test and warm up before the final if we get it right. Or we could fold and lose quite convincingly, and then we'll know that we were just never good enough for it. But I think if we played another more favourable side, let's say, or if it had been Turkey and we'd been outright favourites for the game, then we wouldn't really know what to expect of this team going into the final, would we? Whereas this feels like it might prove a point one way or another.
It's unpredictable in the extreme, isn't it? And that's England at the minute, it feels like. But let's talk about the opponents we've got coming up, the Netherlands, who obviously beat Turkey 2-1. It's a difficult tie for them in many ways as well, because they've been playing some really good football with some absolute stars. Arda Güler again with a great assist. And for the first half, especially, it felt like Turkey were going to probably cause them a lot of problems. They took the lead, of course, but the way the Netherlands came back will be really encouraging for them too. So what do you make of the Dutch from what you've seen so far, especially in this game?
It feels like the whole tournament they've just been going like a boxing match, haven't they? They tried to just get one more hit than their opponent in, and Turkey actually they probably had the better of the game for the majority of it, and it's very much like a slugfest. So we'll see whether England are willing to engage in that or not, because we haven't done that so far, and Holland will try and take the game there. It's funny. The things that you expect this Holland side to be good at haven't really come to fruition. Like we all know, we know Van Dijk very well, and actually, it's not looked like the same Virgil van Dijk that we are kind of used to in the Premier League. So it'd be interesting seeing him come up against this England side. It just depends on who he's got to worry about. Another reason, by the way, that I'd think about Watkins, because Watkins has had previous of tearing Van Dijk apart. Like we all remember the 7-2 and the hat trick against Liverpool. Like he's a good opponent for him. So it's interesting. I feel for Holland because they've had some big injuries. Obviously, Frankie de Jong just before the start of the tournament. I think they'll be absolutely buzzing with the idea that they've got to the semis, and actually finishing third in the group probably helped them on their way there. It's got them a more favourable pathway. Like Romania gave them a great game. Austria obviously beat them in the group stage. Turkey gave them a great game. We've got to go and do the same now because in theory, we are, maybe bar France, the best team that this Holland team have faced so far. And they've not been convincing in any other game. So why should we necessarily fear them? Probably because they'd say the same thing about us.
Yeah, true. Well, I think the one thing that I was really worried about with England especially was just lack of momentum and lack of, I don't know, just feel-good factor from previous games. But it's the first time I think I felt that for a while with England, and winning a penalty shootout with 5 absolutely brilliant penalties really helps do that, doesn't it? And I think that will hold us in good stead against the Dutch, is that even if it goes the distance, we've got subs that can come off in extra time and make a difference if needed. And if it goes to penalties, we've got some very, very good penalty takers who, let's face it, in the shootout against Switzerland, were ice cold, weren't they?
Yeah, I was going to say we moved on to Holland, but actually we should come back and give some time to the penalties because they were outstanding. All 5 of them were brilliant. And let's not forget Jordan Pickford as well. He's fantastic. Like,
it's great.
I love Jordan Pickford. I think we really don't value him enough for what he brings to this England side. And I've been saying it all tournament. He's had an excellent season. And I'm really glad that he had a moment in this tournament because he's not had a lot to do, realistically. We've defended well, but when we've needed him, he's been there. And the penalty save was superb. But then for the 5 takers to all bury him with such confidence, like you think about, for us growing up watching England, anytime you even heard the word penalties, you kind of shuddered. And actually, I'll be honest, I didn't. When we got to when it looked like it was going to penalties, I've never been more confident. I looked at that side and thought, think about the penalty takes we had. Yeah, Cole Palmer, we've seen him dispatching for Chelsea all season with no worries. Same for Ivan Toney. He's probably one of the best penalty takers in world football. Bellingham's confidence, you think he's never missing a penalty. Saka takes them for Arsenal now and has clearly improved that side of his game since the last Euros even. And he brought Trent on, who, pound for pound, technique on a dead ball, are there many better players than him? So I did feel really confident. I was nervous because there is that horrible air of the backlash that any player gets when they miss a penalty, particularly when you look and you've got 5 players there who are not from white British backgrounds. You just worry for them because England fans have developed this awful culture of horrible, racially aggravated attacks on anyone that lets them down, in theory. And then it was really nice to see that they were able to put that fear behind them. They were able to concentrate on the moment and provide something special for their careers. Like, forget the fans for a minute. These are moments that all 5 of those players are really going to hold dear now, and they all deserve that. I think it was excellent.
What stood out for me is the technique in each of the penalties was almost started for all of them. I don't know if you noticed this, by a stand in front of the ball, arms on the hips, and just a deep intake of breath to calm, compose themselves, and then stick to the way they've practiced. And you could see that these were really well-practiced penalties. But the only ever doubt I think England penalty takers have ever had is just psychological doubt, the moment, the pressure, the occasion. didn't seem to be there for any of them. And that's the most encouraging thing for me, is they've got a very mentally strong group of players on the whole, at least from these 5 penalty takers. But there's a few there I think we could have called upon for a 6th or a 7th penalty, who could have been equally as mentally strong. So, brilliant to see. And it's the first time I've been instilled with that much confidence, not just about penalties, but just about the mentality of England. That's really encouraging. And I think against the Dutch, that might give us the edge, because I think they've probably got more self-doubt than we have in some ways.
Yeah, and do you know what? You're so right. I remember I watched the Portugal game and their penalty shootout, and you immediately knew Felix was going to miss. You saw it before he took it. He called it straight away. He'll miss this one. He looked rattled by the idea of it, and none of the England players gave me that impression at all. They knew the weight of the situation, but they knew they were going to get through it. And it's funny because apparently they've done a lot of work on that in training, and there's been a lot of psychological work done with this camp. And that's something that I think Southgate has done really well. Like, it's hard because I do feel like I'm still being quite critical of him, considering we just got to another semi-final, which is outstanding when you think of it as an achievement. 3 semi-finals now that Southgate's got to. That is incredible, really. And the mentality is a massive part of that. And I do think this Netherlands side, although they didn't have to go to extra time, I still feel like they'll be knackered because they've done every game at such a high neck pace, both go forward and back, that I do wonder if something gives there, and maybe mentality is it.
Possibly, yeah. I think also the fact that they brought someone like Weghorst on at half time for Bergwijn shows you the depth of their bench isn't as good as England's, especially in attacking areas. I know you can say they've got Xerxes as well, and Frimpong came on, and they also got Van der Ven, who can't start at the minute. So there is some talent there, but they're still quite young and unproven. So I feel like we can really capitalise on that too. But it looks a lot more positive for England now. And is it coming home? Who knows? But wow, it feels like much more an optimistic take when you look at how the other teams are performing too. And we'll move on to that next, actually, because the other games, I think the biggest challenge looking ahead to a potential final, which is always dangerous, is the Spanish, because obviously in their quarterfinal they dispatched the host Germany really quite convincingly, I thought, even though they left it late. But Spain-Germany, how did you see that game play out? And what did you see from Spain that made you think that they're a potential winner of this tournament?
There are things that made me think that Spain could go on and win. There are also things that make me think that maybe the manager will stand in their way. It's interesting with them. They were absolutely outstanding in large portions of this game, particularly because they've got like an added dimension to anything we've ever seen with Spain. I think I said this in the last podcast, that we're really used to Spain playing everything down the middle, having really conventional central midfielders who want to pass and move effectively. And they've come into this tournament with 2 wingers who look absolutely electrifying. And we're not used to that from this Spanish side. But they've seemed to find a balance of both. And when Pedri went off so early, you worried that actually that might nullify some of that action that they have through the middle. But instead, Dani Olmo just slots in perfectly and effortlessly. He's a sensational player. So there's a lot of ways that this Spain team can hurt you. They can go direct to Morata and look long and hope that he can bring the ball down. They can go out wide and have them beat your fullbacks. They can play through the middle with incisive passing. That's really dangerous because you don't necessarily know what you're going to be defending against. I do wonder whether they might get a bit more complacent now that they are becoming the favourites. I feel like there was no weight of expectation on this Spain side going into the tournament. And I think a lot of people, myself included, would have expected them to not really get that far. And actually, you saw it in this game. When they took the lead, they took off their attacking players and all of a sudden had nothing left. And it was always going to take one moment of brilliance for them to even get back in the game. Like taking Yamal and Williams off just basically said to Germany, we think we're going to win this 1-0 now, and completely forgot the fact that Germany have got some really good players of their own. And obviously, Vert punished them in that moment. So I do wonder if I don't know if there's a good manager left in the tournament, really. Koeman is probably the one that you would say is the best manager. I know Deschamps has got an excellent record with France, but I think a lot of people, including French fans, would say he's kind of holding this side back now. And that seems to be the case with all of the managers left in it. So it will come down to individual brilliance, won't it? And who's got the best of that?
Isn't it weird? There's an element of like pragmatism for them all to an extent. Like they're so cautious, and Deschamps obviously like the standard bearer of caution for his team that's super talented. And Southgate's almost like a disciple of the way Deschamps manages his team, but he's proven to win that way. And I think France still are yet to score a goal from open play. Is that right? And
from one of their players.
from one of their players, which is a crazy stat considering their
I know.
semi-finalists still very strongly favoured to win the whole thing. But keeping on Spain still, like you say, Dani Olmo slotted in beautifully, didn't he? And different kind of player to Pedri, changes the impetus for Spain to make them almost more attacking, doesn't it? But what way he played, what tournament he's had when he has appeared. And I think this was his time to kind of stake his claim really anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, and now he'll play the semi-final. Obviously, Pedri's injury probably rules him out for the rest of the tournament. And that slot is Olmo's. It is a shame, yeah. And it's interesting because Spain obviously will also be missing Dani Carvajal and Lenormand at centre-back, who kind of plays on the right-hand side as well. So if you think that a lot of France's attacking power is going to come down that left with Mbappe, and they're probably going to be playing Jesus Navas, you'd imagine.
Yeah, they will, yeah.
That's not necessarily a fight that I would favour. And probably Nacho as well, who, again, no spring chicken. So France could get some joy there, but they've not managed to exploit that yet this tournament. But you think about Teo Hernandez and Mbappe linking up down there, that's not something that Spain would have wanted to see. And Carvajal definitely wanted to take one for the team at the end of the game, didn't he? He knew he was really going to be suspended anyway, so thought, may as well take that second yellow. Yeah,
why not? I don't think so. I don't think it was the wrong thing to do. I think anyone would have done the same, really.
Yeah.
But I think looking ahead to their semi-final as well, let's look at France as well, because stunk the place out against Portugal in their 0-0 draw. But their defence has been fantastic, hasn't it? William Saliba's been incredible so far, and I don't think that Spain have got enough to get past the French defence. No matter what France do going forward, I don't think France will concede. And I think that might be the difference between the two.
Yeah, and Mike Maignan as well, even when they have had players get through, he's been sensational. So it could be a really low-scoring game, and I think it wouldn't surprise me to see this one go to extra time and maybe even penalties, which, let's be honest, benefits the team on the other side of the draw, doesn't it? That's what you will say. Both teams have had a difficult run to the final. So whoever gets there, fair play to them, but you're going to be knackered. Like one of them was beating Portugal, one's beating Germany, even on the way to the semi. Two sides that were probably up there with the favourites for the whole tournament. So France-Portugal could have easily been the final before the tournament kicked off. Spain-Germany might have been the final before the tournament kicked off. And now they're playing each other, also worthy of a final. So it's going to be a real challenge for them all to stay up for it, both physically and mentally. And I do think, you're right. The difference being, I trust Saliba at the back and Jules Koundé on the right. Up in Meccano, if he stays on his game, he's fantastic, isn't he? And in this game, we obviously saw Camavinga come in for Rabiot, and he was outstanding. He was the best player on the pitch, I thought. And I'll be interested to see whether he keeps his place for the semi-final, because Spain are going to want to do so much of their play through the middle and in that midfield. You need players that are going to be able to match them for quality. I'm not sure Rabiot does that. I'm certain Camavinga does. So it will be a good game. It'll be a really, really good game.
Before we talk about Portugal and Cristiano Ronaldo in particular, let's just talk about why France aren't scoring. Because, this is a surprise for most of us because they've got a lot of attacking talent. Why aren't they clicking? Why aren't they making chances? Why aren't they taking them?
I think there's a lot to say about this. I think, obviously, Mbappe's injury at the start of the tournament is really affecting him. You can see that. Obviously, in this game, like the ball hit him in the face at one point and he looks so uncomfortable. And it's clearly playing on his mind. It's kind of making him second guess a lot of his movement. And from reports, he's not even being able to rest properly because it's obstructing his breathing as well. So it's a similar problem to England with Kane, really. You've got a player who is undoubtedly your best player. So if they give even a glimpse of the idea that they can play, you're going to play them. And I'm not saying that I think they should drop Mbappe necessarily, but it must be difficult for him to really kick into gear in this tournament. I don't think it's a shock that he's not having the best of times of it, but he still has those moments in him. So you kind of can't risk missing him out. Kolo Muani had a bit indifferent time of it this year at PSG. Dembele, I'm just really not convinced by as a footballer, full stop. He's got so much talent at beating a man, and that his end product is just woeful. So France have to find goals from other areas, and that's always been Giroud for them. But now we talk about a player who's a lot older and maybe not able to do it at this top level anymore. So, maybe we overestimated quite how good the French attacking talent is.
Yeah, defensively, though, no doubts at all. But Portugal equally seemed quite toothless as well. And we were saying how they were such a great squad, especially with so much talent, even on the bench, that you could see them going far. I mean, they have gone far. The quarterfinals of the Euros is impressive, but it's clear to see what's holding them back, isn't it? And sad as it is to say, Cristiano Ronaldo it's made them kind of regress from the World Cup, because we didn't see him hardly at all in the World Cup, did we, in Qatar? It was all about Gonzalo Ramos and building a team of individuals that are working really well as a collective, and that worked to an extent. But Ronaldo is the centre of literally anything and everything that goes forward for Portugal, including every free kick, every indirect free kick, every direct free kick. He was there ready and not at his best at all. How are you looking at the Ronaldo situation, his legacy on the back of this? Because he's not won himself many fans, has he? Based on the way he's kind of made himself that centre of attention. Is he to blame, or is it Martinez who's to blame for that?
I think it's got to come down to the coach at the end of the day. Like, it's the same as we said earlier about Kane. Like, he's going to play as long as he makes himself available, because the manager is never going to take him out. And I think it's the same with Ronaldo. If Ronaldo says, yeah, I'm there, okay, great. But you've got to make the decision over whether or not he's the right one for you. And when you've got someone like Diogo Jota on the bench, like, that's the one for me. Ramos had a good time of it in the last tournament, but has not done anything really since. And Felix is an excellent player in his own right, but not a number 9 necessarily that you need to replace Ronaldo. But Jota, we know, is a proven goal scorer, and really that was the one for me that I just thought, you've got to give him more game time in that sort of attacking area. And then the whole set piece situation is even confusing. Even in this game, there was one moment where Ronaldo was lined up a free kick and the camera's right in on his face for so long that they missed the fact that Bruno Fernandes actually took the free kick. And it actually seemed like it surprised Ronaldo. What that meant was we saw Ronaldo's face as someone else took it. And he was a bit like, oh, I got a minute. I think he thought he was taking it. And I wonder whether that needed to happen. Someone to go, no, I'm going to take control of this. It's a shame that nothing came of it. But this Portugal side's really talented, and there's some really good young talent, and it will keep moving forward. It's a shame that Ronaldo didn't get one last crack at it in the best way possible. But I think we just have to admit, he's getting much older now. He's not going to be able to do it forever. I'm not necessarily sure that everyone else, I'm not sure he deserves the level of criticism he's getting, because what number 9 has lit this tournament up. I don't think we've really seen any of them, really, other than maybe Gakpo has probably been the best one, and he's not even really played as an out-and-out number 9. So there is a massive element of fatigue in this tournament. We're coming off the back of a Winter World Cup, a long season, and now we're talking about a player who's much, much older as well, and he's still saying that he'd like to be there for the 2026 World Cup, apparently.
Yeah, that was surprising. I think for me, the Portugal team is so talented. It's the best generation of Portugal players I think I've seen for a long, long time. And Cristiano there, I can imagine they are instantly in awe of him, basically. You can imagine that with Manchester United when he went to them for his return. Yeah. And a lot of the players were thinking, Cristiano's in our dressing room, that's amazing. But when the kind of game that happened just then pans out every single time, you must start to think as a young player, he's actually holding me back and he's out holding this team back. And you must get frustrated. I'm sure they must get frustrated with the fact that they think that players like Jota, who's on the bench, could do better for the team than Cristiano Ronaldo. So it's a difficult one, and I do hope they find a role for Ronaldo going forward, but he shouldn't be starting games. He did 220-minute stints back-to-back, and for a guy his age, crazy. I mean, it's incredible fitness anyway, but it's too much, isn't it? So a sad way to bow out of Euros. Who knows whether he'll be at the next World Cup? But there's a few players that have called it a day, hasn't there? Toni Kroos obviously played his last game, which is incredibly sad. Yeah. Pepe was in tears after the game as well, because he was calling it a day. But he was fantastic too. He did all he could. Yeah, Luka Modric as well was another one who we won't see again in an international shirt. So, yeah, changing of the guard this Euros. But the young players we're seeing coming through, especially the ones that are coming forward in the semi-final round coming up, show you that the new generation is actually going to be as good, hopefully.
Yeah, I'd hope so. There's definitely some really promising talent. And I think even some of the ones that have just left the tournament, if you think Musiala's probably been one of the players of the tournament, Wirtz has had his moments, Arda Güler was sensational, like we said, and the ball in for Turkey's goal, incredible.
Beautiful.
But we've still got 16-year-old Yamal. Williams is still there.
Crazy.
I mean, Bellingham, obviously. Like, it's exciting, actually, and I look forward to that generation kind of kicking on a bit further. It's interesting that they've managed to own this tournament, probably one earlier than anyone was expecting. But absolutely, it's exciting, isn't it, to think about that next few steps.
Great to see. And despite the indifferent form of the teams left in the competition, the next time we talk and we're discussing the tournament as a whole, it's going to be really exciting to see how they actually rise to this occasion, because this is the biggest test of all of their careers so far, and they're so young. I think we'll see them step up in a fearless way. I really do. I hope so anyway. I can't wait to see it.
Me too.
Anyway, that's all we've got time for on this pod, because there's not much else going on outside the Euros right now. I wish there was more transfer talk to mention, but there's not a lot, to be fair. Hopefully we'll have Dave back next week, but whilst you're here, hit like and subscribe. That'd be amazing, whether that's an audio or a video channel on YouTube. We're on socials too, at Football Diary UK. Your support on there would be massively appreciated. Until next time, Miles, enjoy the tournament, mate, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, man. Come on, England.